Ever had an abundance of overripe bananas? Or are you just thinking about throwing them away? Have you ever stopped to consider about making banana bread instead of throwing them away? Well, today in my speech, I'll be talking about the process of making banana bread. As a baker myself, the first bake I ever learned to make was banana bread. So I think banana bread is a fairly easy dessert to make, especially for beginners. So hopefully through this speech, you will all understand the process of making banana bread. I would like to inform everyone about the process of making banana bread, so that next time you have overripe bananas on your counter, you'll make banana bread instead of just throwing them away. In my speech, I would like to guide you through the process of making banana bread by looking at ingredients, how whisking can affect your dough, and lastly, how your oven temperature can change how your bread comes out at the end. Which leads us to our first point, the different ingredients in banana bread. When baking banana bread, there are several ingredients that make this delicious dessert. While grabbing the ingredients, we have two different categories, wet ingredients and dry ingredients. In our wet ingredients, we have eggs, butter, mashed bananas, vanilla extract, and a little bit of oil. So mixing the wet ingredients into the dry ingredients, it's important not to overmix your batter. Why? Well, you can run into the risk of over-whisking your dough and causing it to just come out rough when you finish baking your bread. For soft and tender banana bread, gently stir the wet ingredients into the dry and don't overmix. Fincher 2019. Okay, now that you know about our wet ingredients, it's time to learn about our dry ingredients. In banana bread, the dry ingredients that we have are made up of sugar, salt, flour, and baking soda. All these ingredients have activators in them which help you get a lighter and fluffier dough. Mixing the dry ingredients by themselves mean that you will eventually disperse the raising agents, spices, sugar, etc. throughout, which is important for an even batter. Stafford, 2017. By mixing your dry ingredients away from the wet ones, it will give you a fluffier and lighter dough. And the less you mix the flour, the less gluten has a chance to form. Stafford, 2017. Alright, now that you know and understand how our different ingredients, wet and dry ingredients, we can now move on to talking about the effect over-whisking has on your dough, which is our second point. Over-whisking your ingredients can lead to a rubbery banana bread. When looking at recipes, there are several warnings throughout the article talking about over-whisking, and what does that really mean? Well, over-whisking is how it sounds like. You excessively whisk your dough, and when you're mixing your dough, you can run into the risk of just over-whisking, and this can eventually change how your bread texture is. Over-whisking can affect the outcome of your batter, because you are activating the gluten that's in your dough. Gluten is a good thing and a bad thing. It helps your bread become light and fluffy and rise. But the dark side to gluten is that your dough can eventually become this tough hunk of nothing good in it. And it will just be a chewy bread. When the flour is exposed to liquids and stirred around, the gluten protein in the flour starts to develop a network that will hold whatever you're baking together, and it gives it its structure. There are ways to prevent this from happening in your dough, though, because you can keep an eye on it. Check the recipe to see how long it says to whisk, and if the recipe says just until there's no streaks, then you watch for that to happen. So a good rule of thumb is to stop mixing when there are no streaks of flour left in your bowl. Baking Bites, 2007. Over-whisking can ruin your dough texture. While whisking can ruin your dough, there's also another thing that can also potentially ruin your end bake, and this is having the wrong temperature in your oven. Preheating your oven is one of the most important things you can ever do while prepping for banana bread. Why? Well, when you let your oven climb to that perfect temperature while you're finishing your batter, this helps keep your oven hot and ready for your bread. If your oven isn't hot enough, then your banana bread will be raw in the middle So to prevent this, you can keep your oven preheating until you're ready to bake. Not preheating your oven risks you getting a hunk of just raw dough instead of a delicious banana bread. If you skip this step, the recommended cooking time no longer applies in column 2021. The heat of the oven is not the only thing that helps with cooking time, because ingredients have reactions to the heat in the oven. So if you don't have the correct heat in your oven, then your ingredients won't have that chemical reaction that will help them rise and become what we like, banana bread. So while you're probably wondering, while you're baking, how do you know when it's ready, and when do you take it out when it's perfect? Well, there are different methods to check when your bread is done, and my favorite method is by poking a little toothpick in the middle. If it comes out clean, then it's ready, but if it has little crumbs on it, then then it needs to be cooked for a little bit more. So I hope that my speech helped you learn more about the process of making banana bread, and so that the next time you have, overripe bananas left on your counter, you know to make banana bread. As a baker myself, the banana bread was the first bake I ever learned to make. Banana bread is fairly easy to make, especially with beginner bakers. So hopefully, through this speech, people understand the process of making banana bread. The process of making banana bread can be broken down to 3 steps. Three topics: separation of ingredients, over whisking, and temperature in our ovens. Now that you know the process of how to make banana bread, I hope that you can enjoy making banana bread and share it with your friends and family. And my name is Emily Rojas Gomez, and I hope that you learn a lot from my speech, and thank you for listening.